In a quiet suburban neighborhood, tensions simmered between a homeowner and a local homeowners association, known as the HOA. The homeowner, let's call him Tom, had always taken pride in his property, particularly his driveway, which provided convenient access to his home. One day, he received an unexpected notice from the HOA, asserting that his driveway was considered public property. They claimed that it must remain open for all residents to use, regardless of Tom's personal wishes or ownership rights. This claim left Tom feeling frustrated and bewildered. He had invested time and money into maintaining his home and driveway, and the idea that he could not control access to his property felt deeply unfair. The HOA argued that allowing unrestricted access to his driveway was essential for community harmony and convenience. However, Tom believed this demand overstepped their boundaries and infringed upon his rights as a homeowner. As discussions with the HOA escalated, it became clear that this disagreement would not be resolved easily. Tom felt compelled to take a stand against what he perceived as an unreasonable demand from the HOA. Instead of backing down, he began brainstorming ways to assert his ownership, and that's when a bold idea struck him. Little did the HOA know that this dispute would lead to an unexpected twist in their ongoing conflict, setting the stage for an unconventional resolution that would leave everyone talking. Tom's driveway was more than just a paved path. It was an integral part of his home and daily life. Nestled in a suburban neighborhood, this driveway provided him with convenience of parking right outside his front door, avoiding the hassle of street parking. It was spacious enough to accommodate 2 vehicles and served as a safe haven for his cars. Over the years, Tom had invested significant time and money into maintaining it, ensuring that it remained in top condition. The driveway was not only functional, but also represented his pride of ownership. It was meticulously cleaned every week, lined with decorative stones, and illuminated by stylish outdoor lighting that enhanced the home's curb appeal. For Tom, this space symbolized his independence and control over his property, a fundamental aspect of homeownership. However, the HOA's claim that this private space was public property shattered that sense of ownership. The idea that anyone could park there without his consent felt intrusive. Tom couldn't understand how the HOA could override his rights as a homeowner. After all, he had always respected the community's rules while maintaining his property. As he considered the HOA's demands, Tom reflected on how much he valued that driveway. It wasn't just about parking, it was about asserting his rights and responsibilities as a homeowner. With this backdrop in mind, he began to formulate a plan that would turn the tables and reclaim control over his space in an unexpected way. The HOA's demands arrived in the form of a formal letter, and Tom could hardly believe what he was reading. The association insisted that his driveway must remain open and accessible to all residents of the community. Their rationale was rooted in a supposed need for shared spaces and convenience, claiming that certain areas within the neighborhood were intended for communal use. The letter outlined a series of expectations and deadlines for compliance, leaving Tom feeling cornered and frustrated. In their communication, the HOA cited vague community guidelines about accessibility and the importance of maintaining a harmonious living environment. They argued that restricting access to his driveway could lead to tension among neighbors, fostering an atmosphere of mistrust and division. However, Tom felt these arguments dismissed his rights as a property owner. During an HOA meeting that followed, tensions escalated as Tom voiced his concerns. He expressed disbelief that they could demand open access to a space he had maintained and cared for. The board members, however, remained steadfast in their position, reiterating their belief in community ownership over private property. They threatened fines if he did not comply with their demands, further igniting Tom's determination to resist. Tom was left grappling with feelings of anger and disbelief. It became clear that this was not just a disagreement over parking. It was a clash of values, individual rights versus collective expectations. With each passing day, his resolve grew stronger, leading him toward a resolution that would challenge the very authority of the HOA. Tom's response to the HOA's demands was a mix of disbelief and determination. Initially, he felt overwhelmed by the audacity of the association, grappling with the notion that they could dictate how he used his own property. As he processed this conflict, Tom realized he needed to stand firm against what he perceived as an infringement on his rights as a homeowner. Ignoring the HOA's threats was not an option. He knew he had to take action. Rather than acquiescing, Tom began researching his rights regarding property ownership and community regulations. He pored over local laws and HOA guidelines, seeking to understand where he stood in this battle. With each piece of information he uncovered, Tom grew more empowered. He felt a strong sense of injustice against what seemed like an arbitrary ruling from the HOA. In conversations with friends and neighbors, Tom learned that many shared his frustrations with the HOA's overreach. This support fueled his resolve to push back against their demands. He began brainstorming creative ways to assert his ownership over the driveway while turning the situation into a statement about personal rights. Ultimately, Tom decided that if the HOA believed his driveway was a public space, then he would treat it as such, but on his terms. This revelation sparked an unconventional idea: installing a parking meter on his driveway to charge anyone who parked there. It was a bold move that would not only reclaim control, but also challenge the very authority of the HOA in a way they never expected. With his plan in mind, Tom wasted no time in executing his bold idea. He researched various parking meters online, weighing the options that would best suit his driveway. After careful consideration, he settled on a compact, user-friendly model that could easily be installed without major alterations to his property. Excitement coursed through him as he envisioned the reactions of his neighbors and the HOA once they saw what he was about to do. The day of installation arrived, and Tom was ready. Armed with tools and determination, he carefully positioned the parking meter at the end of his driveway, ensuring it was clearly visible to anyone who passed by. As he worked, he felt a sense of empowerment wash over him. This was no longer just about a driveway. It was about taking back control and making a statement. Once the meter was installed and operational, Tom set the rates, affordable enough to encourage use but sufficient to create a noticeable revenue stream. He felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness as he prepared for the first vehicles to roll in. Within hours of the installation, neighbors began noticing the new addition. Some laughed and expressed support for Tom's unconventional approach, while others looked on in disbelief. The HOA, however, would soon catch wind of this unexpected turn of events, setting the stage for an escalating confrontation. Tom knew he had crossed a line, but he believed firmly in his right to stand up for himself. The battle had officially begun. As the parking meter began to attract attention, Tom couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. He had turned his driveway into a source of income, officially charging anyone who chose to park there. The initial rate he set was modest, just a couple dollars per hour, which he hoped would encourage neighbors to use the space while still generating some revenue. The first few cars that pulled up were greeted with curious looks from passers-by. Some residents chuckled at the sight, while others seemed taken aback by Tom's audacity. It wasn't long before word spread throughout the community about the new parking arrangement. Neighbors who had previously parked on the street or in front of their own homes began using Tom's driveway as a convenient alternative. As cars started lining up to pay for parking, Tom felt a mix of exhilaration and disbelief. He had anticipated some backlash, but he was also surprised by the number of residents who embraced his unconventional solution. Many seemed amused by the situation, treating it like a quirky neighborhood game rather than a serious conflict. However, not everyone was pleased. Some neighbors expressed their discontent, questioning whether it was right for Tom to profit from what they believed should be a communal space. This brewing tension only fueled Tom's resolve. He viewed this as an opportunity to challenge the HOA's authority and cement his position in the ongoing dispute. With every dollar collected, he felt more justified in his actions, ready for whatever came next from the HOA. As news of Tom's parking meter spread throughout the neighborhood, the HOA's outrage reached a boiling point. During their next board meeting, members gathered to discuss what they considered an unprecedented challenge to their authority. The board was furious that Tom had not only defied their demands, but had also turned his driveway into a revenue-generating space in direct opposition to their claims of public access. The HOA president, visibly agitated, opened the floor for discussion, emphasizing that Tom's actions undermined the community's values. They argued that allowing one homeowner to profit from what was meant to be a shared space set a dangerous precedent. The members debated various responses, including issuing fines and escalating their threats against Tom. But there was a palpable sense of frustration as they recognized their limited power over individual property rights. Meanwhile, Tom continued to draw attention from curious neighbors and even some supportive residents who found amusement in his bold move. This only fueled the HOA's anger further. They began drafting letters to Tom, demanding he remove the parking meter immediately and warning him of potential legal action if he refused. Despite their mounting fury, the HOA struggled with how to enforce their demands without appearing overly aggressive or alienating other residents who seemed entertained by Tom's antics. It became evident that this conflict was about more than just a driveway. It was a clash of wills between an assertive homeowner and an HOA determined to maintain control. With tensions running high, both sides braced for an inevitable showdown. The installation of the parking meter sparked a wide array of reactions from the community, creating a buzz that rippled through the neighborhood. Some residents viewed Tom's actions as a clever and entertaining response to the HOA's heavy-handed demands. They appreciated his willingness to stand up for his rights and found humor in the situation, often stopping by his driveway to check out the meter and share a laugh. These supporters rallied around Tom, sharing their own frustrations about the HOA and expressing solidarity with his unconventional stand. Conversely, there were also vocal critics who felt that Tom's decision was inappropriate. They argued that charging for parking in a supposedly communal space was unfair and could lead to discord among neighbors. Some expressed concerns that this situation could escalate into deeper divisions within the community, potentially impacting friendships and neighborly relations. In casual conversations at local parks or grocery stores, opinions were divided. While some neighbors applauded Tom for his ingenuity, others warned him that he was crossing a line that could backfire. Many residents began to wonder what the HOA's next move would be and whether they would take further action against Tom. As discussions unfolded, it became clear that Tom's decision had not only challenged the HOA, but it also ignited a broader conversation about property rights, community ownership, and individual freedoms within their neighborhood. With emotions running high on both sides, the community found itself at a crossroads, caught between support for Tom's boldness and loyalty to the HOA's established rules. As the situation escalated, Tom knew it was crucial to understand the legal ramifications of his actions. He began researching local property laws and HOA regulations, seeking clarity on his rights as a homeowner. Tom discovered that while HOAs have authority over communal areas and certain aspects of property use, they cannot override state laws regarding private property rights. This realization bolstered his confidence, but he also recognized that the conflict could potentially lead to legal battles. Tom consulted with a local attorney specializing in property law, who explained that the HOA's claim over his driveway might not hold up in court if he could prove it was indeed private property. The attorney advised him to document everything: communication with the HOA, the installation of the parking meter, and any interactions he had with neighbors regarding the situation. This evidence would be essential should any legal action arise. Meanwhile, the HOA deliberated their options. They considered pursuing legal action against Tom for violating community guidelines, but they were also wary of how this could reflect on them. Engaging in a lawsuit could further divide the community and damage their reputation among residents. With tensions high and both parties considering their next steps, Tom felt empowered by his newfound knowledge of the law. He understood that while he was taking a risk, he was also standing up for his rights as a homeowner. As he prepared for potential confrontations, he remained committed to asserting his ownership over his driveway and challenging the HOA's authority in a way that would resonate throughout the neighborhood. Tom's decision to charge for parking was not made lightly. It came after much contemplation about his rights as a homeowner and the implications of the HOA's demands. He justified his actions by emphasizing the principle of property ownership. In his eyes, he had every right to control access to his driveway, a space he had maintained and cared for over the years. By installing a parking meter, he was simply exercising that right in response to what he perceived as an unreasonable infringement. Tom viewed the meter as a form of protest, a way to challenge the status quo and make a statement about individual freedoms within the community. He believed that allowing unrestricted access to his driveway contradicted the very essence of private property ownership. Charging for parking was his method of reclaiming authority over a space that should have been solely under his control. Furthermore, Tom argued that his actions could benefit the community in unexpected ways. The revenue generated from the parking meter could be reinvested into neighborhood improvements or community events, creating a win-win situation for everyone involved. He saw this as an opportunity to foster dialogue about property rights, community guidelines, and what it truly meant to share spaces. As he faced criticism from some neighbors and the HOA, Tom remained steadfast in his belief that standing up for one's rights often requires unconventional measures. He felt empowered by his choice, confident that asserting himself would not only impact his own situation, but might also inspire others in the community to think critically about their own rights as homeowners. As Tom's parking meter gained traction, the HOA felt the pressure mounting. Their initial attempts to assert control over the situation had failed, and now they were determined to take decisive counteractions. In a meeting filled with frustration and urgency, the board discussed their next steps, ultimately deciding to formally address Tom's actions through a series of escalating measures. The first move was to send a stern letter to Tom, demanding the immediate removal of the parking meter. They cited violations of community guidelines and threatened hefty fines if he did not comply within a specific time frame. The letter emphasized their authority as the governing body of the neighborhood, insisting that his actions undermined the community's shared values. When Tom received the letter, he understood that the HOA was serious about enforcing their position. Rather than backing down, he viewed it as an opportunity to highlight the overreach of the association. In response, he prepared a detailed rebuttal outlining his rights as a homeowner and reiterating his justification for charging for parking. Not content with just sending letters, the HOA also scheduled an emergency meeting with residents to discuss Tom's actions. They aimed to rally support against him, painting him as a rogue homeowner whose behavior could set a dangerous precedent for others. However, this tactic backfired. Many residents were already sympathetic to Tom's plight and saw the HOA's actions as heavy-handed. As tensions rose, it became evident that neither side was willing to concede. The HOA's counteractions only intensified Tom's resolve, setting the stage for an inevitable showdown between individual rights and collective governance in their community. As the standoff between Tom and the HOA continued, both sides recognized that a resolution was necessary to restore peace in the community. Tensions had escalated to a point where neighbors were taking sides, and the atmosphere was thick with animosity. To address the conflict, Tom suggested a community meeting where residents could openly discuss the situation, share their perspectives, and explore potential solutions. The HOA reluctantly agreed, realizing that ignoring the growing discontent among residents could backfire. They knew they needed to present themselves as reasonable and open-minded, especially since many community members were supporting Tom's stance. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, and anticipation buzzed in the air as residents prepared to voice their opinions. During the meeting, Tom presented his case with clarity and conviction. He explained his motivations for installing the parking meter, emphasizing his rights as a homeowner and the need for open dialogue about property ownership. Surprisingly, many residents echoed his sentiments, sharing their frustrations with the HOA's overreach and expressing support for Tom's initiative. The HOA board attempted to maintain control of the narrative, but found themselves increasingly outnumbered by residents advocating for a more balanced approach to governance. As discussions unfolded, it became clear that a compromise was essential. After hours of debate, they reached an agreement. Tom would continue charging for parking while establishing designated hours and rates that would accommodate both residents and visitors. This resolution not only de-escalated tensions, but also fostered a newfound sense of community. It encouraged open communication between homeowners and the HOA, paving the way for future discussions about shared spaces and property rights. In this unexpected turn of events, Tom had not only asserted his ownership but also sparked a movement toward greater transparency within the neighborhood. The resolution meeting marked a turning point in the ongoing conflict between Tom and the HOA. After reaching a compromise that allowed him to charge for parking while addressing community concerns, both sides began to see the value in collaboration rather than confrontation. The HOA, having faced significant pushback from residents, recognized the need to adapt their approach to governance. They acknowledged that stricter enforcement of rules could alienate homeowners and lead to further disputes. As the weeks passed, Tom's driveway became a hub of activity, with neighbors appreciating the convenience it offered. The designated hours and reasonable rates established during the meeting encouraged responsible use, allowing residents to park without feeling like they were encroaching on Tom's property. This arrangement not only generated income for Tom, but also fostered a sense of community as neighbors shared stories and built relationships while using the space. The HOA, in turn, adopted a more open approach in their dealings with homeowners. They began hosting regular community forums to discuss issues and gather input from residents, creating a more inclusive atmosphere. This shift helped repair the fractured relationships within the neighborhood and diminished lingering tensions. Ultimately, Tom's boldness in charging for parking had transformed not just his own situation, but also the dynamics of the entire community. What began as a contentious dispute over property rights evolved into a constructive dialogue about shared spaces and individual freedoms. Through this journey, both Tom and the HOA learned valuable lessons about communication, respect for personal property, and the importance of community engagement, leading to a more harmonious living environment for everyone involved. In the aftermath of the conflict, Tom took a step back to reflect on the journey he had undertaken. What began as a frustrating struggle with the HOA had ultimately transformed into a powerful lesson about standing up for one's rights and the importance of community dialogue. He realized that his actions, while bold and unconventional, had sparked critical conversations about property ownership and individual freedoms within their neighborhood. Tom learned that assertiveness could lead to positive change, especially when paired with open communication. By standing his ground and insisting on a fair resolution, he not only reclaimed control over his driveway, but also encouraged others to voice their concerns regarding HOA regulations. This experience taught him the importance of being informed about his rights and responsibilities as a homeowner. Moreover, Tom recognized that compromise is often necessary in community living. The resolution he reached with the HOA demonstrated that collaboration could lead to mutually beneficial outcomes. He found that listening to diverse perspectives helped create solutions that respected both individual rights and community needs. As he interacted with neighbors more frequently, Tom cherished the friendships that emerged from this situation. He appreciated how shared experiences could foster deeper connections within the community. Ultimately, Tom's journey highlighted the power of dialogue, understanding, and compromise in navigating conflicts. It reminded him that even in adversarial situations, there lies an opportunity for growth and unity. As he moved forward, he felt more empowered than ever to advocate for himself and his neighbors, knowing that their collective voices could lead to meaningful change in their community. The conflict between Tom and the HOA extends beyond the boundaries of a single driveway. It raises important questions about property rights, community governance, and individual freedoms that resonate with homeowners everywhere. This situation serves as a case study on the complexities of living in homeowners associations, where rules intended to maintain order can sometimes clash with personal liberties. One of the broader implications is the need for transparency and communication in HOA governance. Tom's experience highlights how crucial it is for associations to engage with residents, listen to their concerns, and adapt to changing dynamics within the community. The backlash against the HOA revealed that rigid adherence to rules without considering homeowner sentiments can lead to resentment and conflict. Moreover, Tom's actions sparked conversations about the balance between community needs and individual rights. His bold move to charge for parking challenged the notion of shared spaces, prompting residents to think critically about what it means to own property within a collective environment. It raises questions about how far an HOA can go in claiming control over private property and what rights homeowners truly possess. Finally, this story encourages other homeowners to advocate for themselves. Tom's journey demonstrates that standing up against perceived injustices can lead to meaningful change, not just for oneself but for the entire community. By fostering dialogue and encouraging active participation in local governance, residents can work together towards a more harmonious living environment that respects both individual rights and collective responsibilities. Ultimately, this experience serves as a reminder that empowered communities are built on understanding, respect, and collaboration,